Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another news video for Final Fantasy XIV, this time looking at yet again another wonderful interview with Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. This time, we are leaning towards the fantastic Andrew FusionX Copeland for his fantastic continuation of interviews, always putting out some of the best ones on the interwebs, asking the real questions over at GamerEscape. There'll be a link to this in the top of the description of this video. I would highly recommend you go and give it some love, please. And yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, for your hard work, asking the questions that I personally wanted to ask, honestly. So let's go through this. So this is basically talking about new jobs, Vieira, and the Endwalker Collector's Edition. It's not an enormous segment, but it is quite a juicy one. Let's be perfectly honest. So Andrew says, now that FanFest 2021 has wrapped up, we had a chance to speak to Final Fantasy XIV's Naoki Yoshida, a handful of questions to ask him that still lingered in our minds. Yeah, well, there's a few on my mind as well. Let's see if you hit them all on the head. So GamerEscape says, it's great to see that Endwalker will have so many things that are original to 14. Could you tell us how the development team came up with those ideas for Sage and Reaper? Yoshi P says, every time we design a new job for the game, we first consider the overall design of Final Fantasy XIV at the present, and then decide on the role of the job first. In Shadowbringers, we were planning to add either a tank or a healer, and we ultimately chose a tank at that time. However, since then, we've seen many requests from players around the world asking for a new healer, and conversely, we were intent on adding a healer with Endwalker. The other job was decided to be a DPS, and in consideration of balancing the DPS roles, we decided on a melee DPS that uses the same gear type as the Dragoon. Roughly speaking, our next step would be to decide on the weapon for the job. Many players had requested a job that utilizes a two-handed scythe, so it was a fairly smooth process to settle on that weapon for the Reaper. Once we decided on the scythe, our thoughts went from that to Grim Reaper, which in turn was extrapolated into the idea of implementing an avatar. When it came to Sage, we really struggled with choosing a weapon. There were many ideas: have the Sage hold giant orbs in both hands, or having them carry a medicine box on their back and throwing different potions, for example. We had various discussions and even created rough sketches in the process. Ultimately, we solidified the basic idea to have the Sage control several crystal orbs, not held in the hands but rather floating around them, and finally evolved it into what you see now. Naming the job Sage actually came after all of this, as he laughs, end quote. Interesting. So they deliberately didn't want to, they're not cloning Sage from the early Final Fantasy games. They're just basically calling it Sage afterwards. Interesting. I thought they would have probably thought about the name first, but it's interesting to see how they actually work on all of this stuff and they think of all of these ideas. Definitely different from what I expected. Right, let's continue. Oh god, Vieira time. GamerEscape says lots of players are excited for male Vieira, end quote, including myself. Let's start again. Some, however, are still wondering about the newer races, Vieira and Hrothgar, lack of hairstyles, lack of visible head equipment, and in the case of Hrothgar, needing a Fantasia to change their existing hairstyles. Are there any plans to level the playing field for Vieira and Hrothgar players by making adjustments to those issues? Can I just say thank you, Andrew, for asking that question? That is like the $1 million question right now. Yoshi P says, for both the Vieira and Hrothgar, there were certain characteristics we wanted to emphasize in their design. The long ears of the Vieira and beast-like features of the Hrothgar. Due to this, there was a limit on the range of customization. We worked with these conditions when creating these races. If we wanted to make these features more customizable, we'd have to sacrifice those unique features. So it would be great if everyone could understand that at a fundamental level, it is not simply a matter of whether or not we make adjustments to accommodate this. Okay. He continues, I have mentioned this on several occasions, but I understand why players request this. I really do. In an effort to accommodate this, even if just a little bit, we have continued to spend a lot of time assessing possible changes in structural design of the models, as well as potential additions to our current workflow. Even as I write this, he says, I just met with the team to get an update on their testing status for this. We may not be able to get them to be exactly the same for as the other playable races, but I hope to be able to give you some kind of update soon, including the status on the stubble for Vieira you asked about previously in one of the other interviews. So your patience on the matter is greatly appreciated, end quote. So you notice how he dodges the question about having to spend money on a Fantasia there. That's quite an interesting one. I mean, me personally, in my opinion, I just think that instead of trying to change Hrothgar into something else, they should just change the Fantasia system, change the system itself so that you can change main style in the S-Petition. Surely that would be like the obvious thing to change, wouldn't it? Like, so when you go to the S-Petition, you have an extra option. Now, this isn't something alien, because when you go as an Aura to an S-Petition, you have the ability to change you know, various different things that other people can't, and it's the same for Makote with the tails, right? You can change your tail length and tail shape, but that option isn't there for other people. So why is it then that you can't change that inside the S-Petition? Honestly, I don't understand how that's a thing, but it was completely dodged. In my opinion, I think that was a dodged part of the question. In terms of the Vieira stuff, I understand that there are limits to the customization, and you know, they're looking at some kind of workaround for that. It's good to know, but overall, I don't think that really answered his question. You know, are there any plans to level the playing field? I don't think there is any plans then to level the playing field. Interesting. I don't know. Read into that what you will. Personally, when I read through that answer, it doesn't really answer much of what was asked. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just, I don't know. Anyway, next, with data center travel coming soon, it feels like we're nearing the end of a path that started with World Visit. From a development standpoint, will data center travel and the technology behind it allow you to do things with future content that you weren't able to do before? Yoshi P says, right now we're putting in all of our effort into making travel between data centers a reality. So at present, I do not have anything formulated in regard to further game content or system expansions. When going back and forth between data centers, our frontier servers, which are implemented on a higher tier than the game servers, need to relay information on each character. In order to keep a high processing speed for the frontier servers, they are set up so that the server does not know information on a player's character's free company or the whereabouts of its members. Unlike the World Visit system, the player will not be able to carry over information on their free company or cross-world link shells to another data center. That's why we call this travel, and it is intended as a temporary visit. Using this to create new content will be quite a challenge given the fact that certain information is being withheld during travel. However, I feel that this would enable everyone in the community to hold more large-scale events or create more opportunities to meet and make new friends. I believe this is the biggest advantage of this system, end quote. I have to say, though, it's still not been asked. Is it going to be region travel or is it just cross-data center? I haven't seen that anywhere yet. That hasn't been asked. And it's bugging me. It really is bugging me. It really is. Like, why has nobody so far gone, Yoshi P, is it cross-data center or cross-region data center? Like, can I go to Chaos Data Center from Ether? Or is it just everything, like, is it Chaos and Light, the two European servers? Is it, you know, Ether Primal, etc., on their own? Is it like American data centers going to stay American data centers, like in terms of that travel with cross data center, or are they going to allow EU players, Oceania players, and potentially American players to actually meet each other in the game with their characters. Is this why? I don't know. I don't know why this has not been asked yet, but it was a good question regardless. But I just don't understand why they're being so, what do you call it? Yoshi P seems like there's a reason they're not going near that. It's almost like no one's asked that because they probably have asked that, but it's not being answered. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That was the thing that's still burning in my head and is still burning now, because the more I see people say, "Oh yeah, it'll be cross region, Meoni," right? Well, find me the proof of when they said specifically cross region on the data center travel, because I can't find it anywhere. I watched FanFest like over and over again, the footage from it. I watched the live letter stuff at the start of that, and obviously nothing there. I've read through countless interviews and text documents and translated interviews. So far, no one has asked that question, or at least it hasn't been published, which makes me question quite a bit. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Even so, I like the idea of cross-data center travel. It's going to open up the world a bit more. I just hope that it's opening it up a little bit further than I hope. You know, I hope that it's cross-data center across cross-region, but my hopes are dwindling at the moment. I mean, for me personally, I play on Chaos Data Center. That would mean that I could travel to Light Data Center, which is awesome. I get to meet people who play on Light, but I kind of want to play with people, you know, on their actual characters. Like Chili from Moogle Go Around. I would love to go and visit Chili with my character, you know, on Ether. But is that going to be a possibility without basically making a new character on that server? I have no idea. And then finally, we've got, with previous expansion releases, players often got a heads up for when they could pre-order the collector's edition. Was there a reason that didn't happen this time around? Are there plans to make more physical collector's editions for those players who weren't able to secure a pre-order? Andrew's on fire. These questions are fantastic. Yoshi P says, "First, I want to apologize that we were unable to keep up with the large demand for the collector's edition. We had initially planned for our fan festivals to be physical events, but as each one was cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic and having to pivot to one single digital event, it led to this misstep. With FanFest 2021 now one single event, we were heavily focused on the promotional aspects of the event, trying to make a big splash with major Endwalker news and also announcing the beginning of pre-orders for the title while all of our fans were tuned in. Looking back on it, that goal was impetus for pre-orders starting so suddenly, and it was a big learning point for us. I do want to note that we have continued to carefully consider the quantity of our physical collector's editions based on the quantities and sales from previous expansions. However, the recent influx of players greatly surpassed our expectations, that's good, which resulted in a shortage of supply over the great demand for collector's editions. Unfortunately, it takes a very long time to produce all of the different merchandise items and figure for the collector's edition, and we tried to readjust the allocation globally, but every region was at their capacity and we were unable to add any more stock. We hope that you can understand, and again, I would like to give my sincerest apologies for this." End quote from Yoshi P. So, let's see, unable to add any more stock. Every region was at their capacity. Every region was at their capacity. So there's a capacity on how many collector's editions each region is allocated or allowed. Capacity. So, like, are we imagining a big warehouse full of collector's editions and like, oh no, we can only have 500 collector's editions in this warehouse? Or is that not the physical? Is there not a physical limitation? Is it a more of a limitation on how much allocation they're given, especially considering the he says how long it takes to create these items, and I completely agree. I mean, they are really good quality items, and I can't wait to get mine in the future, but interesting use of words. But again, not really any information on if there were any plans to add any more physical collector's editions, And I don't think that necessarily answered the question. I don't know. I mean, all you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But yes, it seems to be quite an interesting interview, this one. That's the end of the interview, by the way. Very interested to see his responses. I don't think the Vieira and Hrothgar thing really got answered that differently than we've seen it before. It didn't answer any of those things. We knew that they were working on minor things in the background. I think that the Hrothgar Fantasia thing was completely dodged. I think the Collector's Edition question was somewhat dodged, in my opinion. And ultimately, the Sage and Reaper thing was probably the most interesting and new pieces of information we got. But, you know, thank you so much, Andrew, for your fantastic fire interview. You asked all the right questions. If you get another chance in the future, if by any chance you ever see this, I don't suppose, since you have this connection, could you ask? Just for me, this will be like big news, okay? Just ask if it's going to be cross-data center or cross-region data center. That's the only question I want answered now in my entire existence. If I could only ask one question to Yoshi P, that would be the one. And I don't want this whole, the answer of, oh, well, the limitations of such and such. I want a yes or a no. Will I be able to go and visit my American friends or not? But anyway, thank you so much to Andrew Copeland for your fantastic GamerEscape interview. Please go check out the link in the description. And, you know, try and keep things constructive in the comment section. I think Square Enix are doing a fantastic job. I'm looking forward personally to male Vieira, but I will just reiterate this again. Any comments that I make or like criticism I give the game is for the game's own benefit. And personally, I think we should be allowed to be opinionated on things like this. We've covered this in multiple topics. I just want things to be fair. As Andrew said themselves, is there any way of leveling the playing field? Well, we'll have to wait and see what they've got up their sleeve, but at least they're working on something for Vieira. That's good. That's good. That's good information to have. That's good news. Hrothgar, I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. Fingers crossed for everyone who plays those races that you get the equality that you deserve when it comes to creating your character, because more options and the better access to this stuff, the better, in my opinion. All right, much love. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the sunshine if it's hot where you are. It's like 25 degrees midday today. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.